Welcome back again to the series dedicated to microcellular examination of the Star Wars novel Supernatural Encounters. We continue with the breakdown of Chapter 5, titled Secrets of the Keeper, which can be found on pages 42 to 49. In this section, we continue to read about the fourth manuscript reading in the Historical Council, as written in-universe by Arhul, accounting his journey's first steps. It's yet another awesome chapter with a ton of awesome dialogue that tells of pretty neat beginnings to an epic adventure. Here's the obligatory spoiler warning. Now let's jump right into some awesome lore. Right off the bat in the first paragraph, Arhul mentions that he spent many months studying and collecting information on Ophidian grotesques. Ophidian is a real-world word defined as meaning or relating to snakes. Ophidian grotesques were first mentioned in Fate of the Jedi Vortex by Troy Denning. And what exactly are they? It's an in-universe branch concept that encapsulates ancient designs and styles in the form of snakes, vines, or tentacles that in-universe historians believed were left behind by ancient species who were in contact with the Celestials when they had created them. These grotesques were found in the ruins on Abeloth's planet by Luke Skywalker and on the architecture in the bowels of ancient Coruscant. Arhul mentions next that he believes Osiria can unlock the entire puzzle he seeks to solve, as Osiria was home to, quote, the earliest recorded history of sentient life in the galaxy. Osiria, as mentioned in previous episodes, is the Supernatural Encounters name given of the Keeper's world planet, from the Pizzazz comics of the same name. Arhul then mentions the Keeper, a massive and advanced technological mainframe that resided on the planet, that was left behind by the population that fled the planet many years prior. The Keeper had many unique powers, including the ability to create android lifeforms and life that is organic. All of the information that Arhul recounts on the Keeper and the planet comes from the original comic book. Even the 4 android children of the Keeper who controlled the elements receive a mention here. While bioengineered protective life forms were unique, it wasn't unheard of according to the text, as Arhul rattles off a list of various species known to have done this previously, including Alashanians, Gree, Pyrians, Tarkonians, and the Cathal. The Alashanians were the original population of the Alashan planet from the World of Fire UK Star Wars Weekly arc. The Gree first came from the Gree Enclave story in Adventure Journal number 8. The Pyrians are from Space 1999, Season 1, Episode 11, titled Guardian of Pyri. The Tarkonians are from the Adventures of the Galaxy Rangers cartoon series, and the Cathal species come from the Endgame sourcebook, from the overall Darkstrider campaign sourcebook series from West End Games. Had Arhul known of the Keeper sooner, he would have visited sooner, according to him. But in-universe records of Luke and Leia's crash land on Osiria had been placed into the spurious directories by a prior historian. The concept of the historical SD files was previously mentioned in earlier chapters of the work. So Arhul and Q9 went to Osiria in hopes of getting to speak to the Keeper and discover its knowledge. Upon reaching Osiria, Arhul describes the sprawling jungles and ruins that we saw depicted within the original comic storyline, and calls it peculiar, yet describing it as different than Karakatuk. The planet Karakatuk being one of the settings of the previous chapter, a previous planet that Arhul had just visited. The planet was first mentioned in Aliens of the Empire hyperspace story. Arhul follows the report that Luke Skywalker had made of his encounter there, and how he had reached the Keeper in his temple. But by the time Arhul gets to it, nothing remains of it except a blasted crater, clearly destroyed via aerial bombing, which implies that the Imperials took it out after the original comic story. Arhul gets distraught, believing the journey to be immediately at a dead end, but Q9 points out that they can attempt to figure out the fate of the native Assyrians via studying the pictographs in the ruins, and still try and piece together their disappearance, even without the Keeper to help them. Arhul mentions that Dr. Antilles will be able to help them too, a character who we saw present in prior chapters at the Historical Council debate. Her character first came from the Gree Enclave story. Arhul mentions, though, that studying the ruins of the planet will be extremely hard, as no archaeologist had previously attempted to do so, due to a wide variety of creatures that roam the planet. The comic story this expands upon revealed to us green cat monsters, as well as purple cyclopses and triclopses, dangerous creatures that seem to have killed many a space traveler on the planet. This made research incredibly dangerous for them. Apparently, a survey team from the Old Republic had never returned from the planet, in historical documentation that Arhul was aware of. Arhul took care in his studies not to disturb native plant life and fauna, given that the world was a natural and untouched oasis, and being that according to documentation, the Osirian people had long ago been a people of pacifism. And so in an example of Arhul showing his strength of character, he strives to honor the legacy of the planet's culture. Arhul plans that should the creatures attack them, that if he can learn the ancient Osirian language, they should be able to understand him if they are indeed created as protectors of the planet. And he notates that the elder species seemingly all had shared a common language, one that presumably the Osirians also spoke. Arhul notes that before Professor Arn Harada had died, he'd been working on ancient Qua language phonetics. Harada was a professor who taught Leia from Marvel issue number 30, and he was referenced in a previous chapter of this work. Q9, the ever-vigilant and helpful droid companion, works on compiling characteristics of the Gree language to look to use it to help decipher Osirian language structure. 3 trade languages employed by various species in the galaxy are then mentioned, including Baka, Huttese, and Saibisti. Baka was an interplanetary trade language crafted from multiple existing species' languages. This language was first mentioned in the A New Hope novelization by Alan Dean Foster. Huttese, the widely utilized language of the Hutts, which became the second most prevalent language spoken in the galaxy, first appeared in A New Hope, the film. Lastly, Saibisti was an Outer Rim and Unknown Regions, less common trade language, sometimes used by the Killiks. This language first appeared in Outbound Flight by Timothy Zahn. Q9 informs Arhul that the native animal life is semi-sapient, and shortly thereafter, Arhul and Q9 encounter an animal described as a 2-headed wolf cat, a surely fearsome-sounding creature that I believe could have been similar in appearance to the green spiny creature seen on Osiria in the original comic series panels. The heads of the creatures are likened by Arhul to that of a Kima and Karina. Kimas are from the video game Galaxies and Empire Divided, depicted as canines hailing from the planet Talos. Karinas are wolf-like animals from Endor that first appeared in the Ewoks cartoon, Season 1, Episode 13, which was titled Asha. I love the obscure animal references to describe this new creature that Arhul and Q9 encounter here on Osiria. Q9 bravely approaches the animal even as it growls at him, and the droid projected words in Osirian to attempt to communicate with it. The animal snarled, but gradually as Q9 blurted out more sentences, rubbed its head against the droid. The animal is revealed to be sapient, able to fully communicate in the Osirian language with Q9, and it offers itself as a mount to Arhul. Arhul dubs the creature Karina, naming this wolf cat animal for the species one of its heads apparently resembles. Karina acts as a guide for Arhul and Q9, showing them many ruins and peaceful places on the planet, and acting as safety to ward off other dangerous creatures from trying to chase down or eat them. One morning as Arhul watches wild and unrecognizable creatures stalk by, he notices one that appears like a human child with glowing eyes, clearly to those who have read the comics, a reference to the android children of the Keeper. But Arhul, not knowing this, wonders if it is a remnant member of the Osirian population, to which Karina explains that all that's left are Keeper's children. Karina also mentions how over many centuries, many had come to the planet, and none had survived, as those left sought to protect the planet's natural oasis. As they traveled for several days among strange and wild creatures in the forests, Arhul noticed green flying balls with tendrils, and wondered aloud if there are bouncers on Osiria. Bouncers are a green sentient species native to Rusun that first appeared in the William C. Dietz novella Dark Forces Rebel Agent, and also went on to appear prominently in the Jedi vs. Sith comics and Darth Bane trilogy. Q9, translating to their guide Karina, explains what the Rotian species is. This means that Supernatural Encounters officially offers an official designation for the Bouncer species, establishing that they are also called Rotians. The answer as to whether those were Bouncers is ambiguous, as Karina says that there are many species on the world that she does not know of, but also that Arhul may have been imagining seeing it. This detail adds to the dreamy and trippy magical feel to Assyria that Joe Bongiorno masterfully conveys with the prose in this section, a world full of dreamy potential and mysticism. Eventually they come to a massive conurbation, which is an urban area, traveling through ancient temples and caverns filled with Assyrian information in ancient writings. They came upon written chirography on upright stone menhirs. After hours of translating, they managed to decipher the stories of the Assyrians' escape and retreat. Apparently, they had convened with several offspring races that had gone over to the enemy. One of their offshoot species is named as the Serianen, who had gone their own way. The Serianen runes and planet, known as Sirius, first appeared in Adventure Journal No. 8's short story, Scout's Dispatch, which tells the tale of a planet filled with alien runes called Sarian runes in their caves, which indicates a past extinct civilization of aliens that once abided there. Clearly going their own way did not work out well for them, as they were extinct by the modern times. Connecting the Assyrians to the Serianens of Sirius is very cool. This is when, in the past narrative, the Shimolt species, as mentioned in the previous chapter, had offered to help the Assyrians, who went off-world following the Shimolt leader, managing to find a safe route to those wishing to flee the planet and the unnamed enemy. Arhul manages to discern that this event occurred 36,000 years prior, which by coincidence occurred during the Killick's Great Migration. The Great Migration of the Killicks occurred when many of the Killick's colonies left from Alderaan, with some hibernating underground there, but many leaving into unknown parts of the galaxy not to resurface for millennia. This mass migration event was first named and mentioned in the New Essential Guide to Alien Species from 2006, but was later referenced in SWOTOR and the Essential Atlas as well. Arhul notes that this was 5 centuries or so before the Rakatan people spread out from Lehun in their infinite empire, which was just prior to the Thoyor gathering Force sensitives to the planet Tython to train them into what eventually became the Jedi Order. The majority of information on the Thoyor, Rakata, Lehun, and Tython comes from the KOTOR video game and Dawn of the Jedi comics. Clearly a lot of important events occurred in this time frame when the Assyrians fled, leading Arhul to clearly believe in some kind of connection between these events. As Arhul continues to research, he finds the records claim the Assyrians did not make it to their intended safe haven, abandoning the Keeper to be alone, never again to see its makers. An emissary of the adversary had captured the Assyrians along their route and taking them to a written as evil realm that was titled Dark Illathurion. Illathurion will play an integral role in the following story of supernatural encounters, and is a fascinating and key part to the story that will unfold. Cool to see it mentioned so early on in the story and in Arhul's research here. Arhul and Q9 were puzzled by Illathurion and what it could possibly be in reference to, but they knew of someone who could know. So despite it being painful to leave the beautiful and mysterious world that Arhul was growing to love, they decided to depart the planet sooner than intended. On their journey of return to their vessel, Arhul awoke with a nightmare in the early hours. He bathed in the creepy twilight in a nearby lake called Lake Spiorad. Spiorad is a word of Irish origin translating to spirit, which keeps the tone of the ghastly lake on point. Arhul dines on local nuts and fruits that Karina greenlighted as edible. After some somewhat trivial research, I have determined that the earliest mention of the nuts as a food in Star Wars comes from the 1984 board game Wicket the Ewok and Friends. Additionally, the concept of the food fruits first appeared in Star Wars in 1978's Splinter of the Mind's Eye. Arhul also drinks hot cocoa afterwards. Hot chocolate, also called hot cocoa, is a well-known existing Star Wars concept within the fan base. It first appeared in Heir to the Empire by Timothy Zahn, and was a well-known favorite beverage of Luke Skywalker. Perhaps the most famous appearance of hot chocolate in Star Wars is when Luke Skywalker orders several cups prior to his wedding, as depicted in the Star Wars Union comic book series. With some time to kill afterwards, Arhul wandered into some ruins that he'd neglected studying previously due to their lack of visible inscriptions. As Arhul explored, he felt as if he was being watched. He reached an odd 8-ring structure with 8 walls that seemed to have taken damage from the blast of the Star Destroyer that had evidently blown up the Keeper's temple previously. Arhul ascended stairs to the center, and afterwards found a single-headed Kima and Karina cross each other like hands of a clock. causing the platform he had reached to spin. As he attempted to locate the creatures after he had began spinning, they transformed into creatures like Rotian bouncers of Rusin. Arhul doesn't believe the weirdness that unfolds around him at first, and he attributed it to having eaten the wrong sort of tuber the night prior for the psychedelic unfolding. Tubers in our world refer to plants such as potatoes and cassava, but in Star Wars, tubers are a specific type of vegetable grown and eaten by the Karens of the planet Kara that first appeared in the Adventure Journal No. 1 article, Stranded. Whether Arhul was eating tubers from Kara the previous night, or some kind of local Asarian potato under the branch term, is down to personal interpretation of the text. Arhul had to dismiss hallucinogens as soon as a starry-eyed boy told him to climb further steps. The ring began to glow around Arhul, glowing green, and another starry-eyed child, this one a girl, showed up. I believe these children are clearly meant to be similar, if not the same entities as the Keeper's android children, as seen in the original Pizzazz comic storyline. Arhul climbed the now further steps before him, and upon reaching the top found himself in a new chamber filled with warm light. Arhul found what is described as a shaggy, antlered, bovine creature at the top, sitting on its back haunches, and it chastised Arhul for taking too long to reach him. I believe the creature may be similar in appearance to that of the Bendu, as depicted in Rebels. The entity introduced itself as the Shepherd of the Oracle, and called itself La Loupe. La Loupe is a French phrase that means the wolf in English, though in the case of Supernatural Encounters, it pays homage to a real-world friend of author Joe Bongiorno, who served as a translator, named Albin La Loupe. La Loupe informs Arhul that he has crossed into an area that crosses between physical and metaphysical, and he turns into a giant wolf, still adorned by shaggy fur and antlers. He tells Arhul that he has 3 doors before him, and he has to choose one. He introduces the doors as the door to dreams, the door to will, and the door to mystery in the future. The door to will was made of quadanium steel, which is a fictional metallic substance from within Star Wars. Portions of the Death Stars are made of quadanium steel, and it is a registered trademark of the Empire within the in-universe lore. It appeared in a variety of EU material, retroactively making its first appearances in A New Hope. The third door was made of Brylark wood. Brylark wood is most likely a reference to the Brylark tree, which first appeared in the Clone Wars Season 5 Episode 7. In that episode, the Wookiee Jedi Gunji made his lightsaber handle out of wood of the Brylark tree. All 3 of the doors called to Arhul, but eventually he decided to stay on the path he was told he is currently on, a treacherous road to the mystery and future. This leads to a philosophical conversation on choice and the merits of love. La Loupe promises to return to Arhul in a tale to tell as a vision, though Arhul will not remember it until it is required. Suddenly all of these apparitions vanish as he hears Karina's howl, and he finds himself standing at the edge of the ruins. Only a few minutes had passed in all of this dreamlike experience for him. The chapter ends with Arhul and Q9 saying goodbye to Karina and Osaria, leaving for the planet Fusei. The planet Fusei first appeared in the Gambler's World comic strip by Russ Manning. Bound for the planet whereon Fusei was a branch of the Grotesques Institute's Celebritas Archive. The Celebritas Archive first appeared in Heir to the Empire, but was first named in the Essential Atlas. It is a giant library on the planet Grotesques that was founded in 16,782 BBY. The EU previously established that a branch of the Celebritas Archive Library existed on the planet Fusei. As the chapter closes, Arhul wonders what would have occurred if he had chosen another door. To recap this chapter, it was fairly light, at least for Supernatural Encounters, in terms of in-depth, deep-cut lore references. But the story that unfolds in this chapter is so interesting and exciting. I love the mystical, hazy tone that is established, as Arhul searches and yearns for truth amongst ruins on the planet. A ton of fun and hilarious banter dialogue between Q9 and Arhul also occurred during this chapter. It's really great stuff and super fun. But that about includes all of my breakdown for Chapter 5, Secrets of the Keeper. Join me next time when we'll dive into Chapter 6, Mistress of Fusei, and do a breakdown for that chapter. Hopefully it won't be as long as a 6-month wait for that one. I'll see you guys then.